Hello, designers. Welcome back. If it's been a little while, if you ask me, any day is a good day to play around in XD. And today we have on deck going over component states and scroll groups in Adobe Xd. Really quickly, where we are headed, we're going to take a look at a button hover state is animation. We're going to look at how scroll groups work. We'll look at the vertical and horizontal scroll group with the example of a map that has a pin that expands to a card as another lead in to full on talking about components and component states, using them for fairly simple animations, and we will finish by looking at a hamburger or more menu as component. We'll look at for those component states some heart fills, animating a hamburger to an X, and what's the other one? Yes, we'll look at a fab menu, so a flyout button, really quick. All right, so strap in. This one will take a minute. We're gonna see if we can get through it in about 40 minutes or so. All right, so what I have here is number one. I want to take a look at hover states. Currently, what I'm working on and guiding some students through is a lot of work with mobile apps. But the thing about XD, with how powerful it is, being able to post live prototypes to the web for feedback, sharing with clients, thinking about a portfolio situation where you want to crank out a website. Doing web work in here is just as easy, and there are a few extra functionality items that you can utilize for websites. Hover actions being one of them. There are two sort of pre programmed animations when it comes to components. One is hover, one is toggle. And those are fairly easy to get your head wrapped around. So I did want to look at hover, even though hover states don't exist on mobile. They are really handy for websites, and it's something we're all familiar with, trying to make that translation. So, number one, always keep an eye on your layers panel. Make sure things are labeled appropriately. What I have here is a background for a button and just a really simple label that, doesn't really mean anything. It's just call to action. What I want to do is put a simple hover state on this that just changes color when you are over it. So it's not actually an animation. Um, so we're going to start by selecting both. I do a combination of selecting on the artboard, selecting in the layers panel. It is the same as Photoshop. You can select a layer, hold shift, it'll select everything in between, or select a single layer and hold command. It'll give you whatever other layer you click on. In this case, we need these two. And what I'm going to do is create a component. I can do that by hitting the plus sign over here next to component, or the faster way is Command K is the keyboard shortcut. I'm going to immediately name that component so I can keep track of things. CTA hover. Once you get into the kind of nested components, where you can really make things super robust and build a lot of functionality into them, having your layers appropriately named becomes absolutely crucial. All right, so we have our CTA hover component. We have the default state, which is where it's resting right now. You cannot change this default state name. But what we want to do is add an additional state. You can see by the little lightning bolt, that's an automatic wiring for prototype. So we want hover state. It's going to let us give this a name. This is just going to be pretty much the same name because we aren't going to do much. CTA hover. So I have my default, I have my CTA hover, and all I really want to do in here is easier to navigate through the layers panel, saves you some clicking. I'm going to go inside of my component. I'm going to go to the background and very simply, all I'm going to do is darken up that background. And that'll give me my hover. That'll be really similar to what we are going to do with the other one. So we're gonna click back and forth just to take a look. There's my default, there's my hover. Obviously this would link out to something else, which we are gonna do here. Then we're gonna go into prototype stage just to take a look. But you can see the hover is automatically wired right here. And we can look, its default state, hover, auto animate to the destination is the other hover state. We can ease out is fine, 0.3, great. So I can preview that with the little play button or command enter is the keyboard command, and we can see there's our little action. And we could also put a tap behind that, which this one has because I was copying things around to get us to another artboard or back, whatever the case might be. That's just what I have wired in here. All right, let's look at a little more involved example. So the Google material specs, you see a lot this hover where what happens is the button, when you hover over it, the button fills with a solid color. So what we need for that is the button text, the button fill, the button background, and a mask for the whole shoot and match. So the way components work when they're, as you start getting some more moving pieces, you have to have everything in place before you make the component. And the layer names have to stay the same, and the layer position has to stay the same. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and load this in where it goes and where I want it to be. I have my layers named, I have them positioned correctly right now. And what I'm going to do with this, so I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to make this 1 pixel so it disappears nicely. And it's going to be a little off center so that I can hide it behind the T there. But that absolutely works. The last piece I need a mask for this whole thing so that when the circle is big enough to fill it, you don't see it outside of the edges of the button. So I'm just going to take the button background. I'm going to duplicate that by hitting Command D. And then I'm going to take that background. I'm going to move it to the top of the stack of the things that I am working with. I'm going to rename it button mask. Actually, you know what, it'd be more meaningful, hover mask, right? And then one thing I like to do with masks, and you really only see it once, or if you end up releasing the mask again, I like to fill them with an absolutely ugly, mind-blowingly burn my eyes color just to make sure I can see everything. Now, to actually make the mask, so we can see everything still under there, just that's the mask. To actually make the mask, I'm going to select everything that I want to mask. And then I can click anywhere and hit mask with shape, and Xd will use hover mask group. Xd will use whatever shape is at the very top. There's the mask now. It's kind of transparent and just an outline, but it still has this fill color. So I know whenever I have something selected and it looks like it's not there, if I look over into the properties panel and I see that neon yellow color, yellow green, I know that's a mask because that's what I always do. That is extremely helpful. All right, now let's make this a component and get that circle to fill behind the text in in one additional state, actually, and get it wired up. So I have the mask group selected. I'm going to make that a component. Let's do it the long way by hitting the plus sign. Default state. This is what I want. So good to go. I'm going to add a new state, and it's going to be a hover state, one of the pre-selects, and let's call this circ fill. All right, now we are ready to go. So we have hover mask gr, hover mask. We're in and I'm constantly checking back and forth between my layers and the properties panel over here, making sure I'm in the right place, on the right layer, on the right state of my component. What I want to address is the hover fill, and the easier way to get hold of this, because right now it's super tiny, is just make it really big, and then I'm going to end up making it even bigger actually, and I just want this to go center so that it fills out the button, and you'll see when I click off this, now my button is filled. So what we need, let's go back to hover mask group, which is our states. We'll check our other state. There we go. Now the animation is going to make it look like the circle that we have hidden behind that T right now. So hover, auto animate, circle fill. Let's do an ease in instead. Is going to make it look like that circle is growing to fill the button when we hover over it. Now, we do want to check the other, or no, it's a fill, so, or a hover, so we don't have to go back. That's it right there. So playhead or command enter, and now you can see when I hover over the button, not the CTA, that we get that circle fill. And what actually we could do so that we can really actually see that is put it on 0.5, and there you go. There's the nice slow fill from the center. Yes, I know there are buttons out there that look like they come from the side, look like they come from the middle, look like they come from the other side. Pulling that off isn't difficult. It's just really tedious because you actually have to split the button in three and have three components, one for each animation that you are wanting to work with. All right, that is the quickie of button hovers. Let's take a look at scroll groups. Scroll groups are really handy kinds of things, and they function really well. Let's look at the plain one first. So I have this set up, and I can drag through. It's not really what I want to do here because it's kind of going to link me out. I have this set up a little more like a gallery where I have the three dots for the buttons below that tells me where to go within this scroll group. So the basic setup for how a scroll group works, I have a certain amount of objects. In this example, they're just cards or, little panels. The thing is to think about it possibly as kind of a product scroller, or maybe it's streaming for video, or it's music titles, whatever that case is. So I select all of the objects I want to be in the scroll group. The scroll group controls are right over here, and we have horizontal, we have vertical, and then we have horizontal and vertical. In this case, we want the scroll to go horizontal. Once you activate it, it's going to highlight this window for you. Basically, what it's doing is grouping everything, giving it a mask, and allowing you to drag through it is the basic functionality. I like to have a little space to my background on each side. That works. Um, and that without doing any wiring, not even going to go into prototype phase. We're just going to take a look at this. That allows me to do this in a live prototype situation. And as you can imagine, so I do have, if I do go into prototype mode, and let's say on the magenta one, um, if I group that, because you can put actions on a group, now it's giving me the action wire that I can activate and drag somewhere. I can drag that to my other scroll group as kind of a link to next board. So let's auto animate. It's based on a tap. Yes, that's the right board. And it's a simple transition. And the animation is, let's say it's slide right. Doesn't really matter. Ease in, out, 0.3. Great. So now what happens is once I scroll to here, now I have an active click, and that'll take me over to this artboard, which I wanted to look at. So this simple horizontal scroller that just has the kind of button set up for it. This is set up as a kind of a product viewer, and then the click would actually go to a product page. In this case, it goes to an example of the horizontal and vertical scroller. So I have a giant image behind there, and you can see I can click and drag around. I have it set to return to previous artboard once I finish. And again, let's, if I get the, I'm going to use an, in design mode, I'm going to use an ellipse, and let's just pretend that that's a back button, right? So it's just an ellipse. For me to get an action on it, I need to make that a group all by itself, and that's going to be the back circle. All right, now I go into prototype, I pull my wire, and we're going to have a tap. It's going to be transition, choose an artboard. No, it's going to be previous artboard is the type, and it does everything else all on its own. So that's how to wire a back button, and you can see it even has the what we're used to seeing as the back button on screens as the indicator there. So now when I preview that, um, I can play with that. I could link into that other screen, or I could go back where I was. So let's see. I don't think I can actually get all the way through these boards. So let's do that. That one ended at this. So instead of throwing that here, let's throw it there. So I just did that. And now, starting from here, we can go here. There we go. We can get to here and then back to here, and then it'll take me back to my previous screen, which was the big scroller. All right, enough on that. So that's pretty simply the vertical ones. What I did just quickly want to look at was how this was built out as far as pieces underneath. So it is just the vertical scroll group. And if I pull this out, you can see the other two cards under there. And then I have these circles for the individual boards. And they are just circles, but I grouped them and then gave them names based on which card they go with, right? So this is card 1, the yellow is yellow card 2 and magenta is card 3. So the way that I built them for this over here and then just translated them. So back to the way it was. If we look at this component, the way that you pull that off is it actually has use auto animate, and it has 3 states. It has the default where the leftmost button is filled, the middle slide with the middle button filled, and the final slide with the last button filled. And the way you wire it is by wiring the buttons as links to, if we look at the wiring on this one, is a tap auto animate that goes to the middle slide, and in similar fashion the animate on that one goes to the last slide. In this state of the component on the home state, on the middle state we have to wire the other 2 buttons to go where we want, because those would be the active press. And then same thing with the one all the way on the right. So that's an example of nested components. What I would tell anyone is you want to watch a couple of videos of somebody building those things and then practice. It takes practice. I built a really simple one and then populated that, so sort of a wireframe situation, and then populated it to something real, and it still needs more things to go with it. But once you get into nesting things, things get a little complicated pretty quickly. All right, I will stop running around. So this is a vertical and horizontal scroll group. And what I would like to show you is how to, we're going to pretend those really pretty polka dots are actually, so frame, are actually a map. So what I want to do is I have here on the polka dot group, I have a couple things going on in here. So once you have a group activated, if you hold Command and click, it will allow you to click into the group. So this blue dot right here is ellipse 97, and I've gone ahead and made it a group and put a card in here to go with it. So what I am going to do, I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to select my pin card group at the same time. I'm going to get back into design mode where I'm supposed to be. Now I'm going to make this a component. We're going to make it so that when you click on the blue dot, the card pops up to tell you how far away you are from all the other dots that hopefully are all your friends at the same event that you are. So Command K again is keyboard shortcut. Now, default state. This is not how I want the default state to look. I actually want the pin card to slide up and look like it's coming in. So what I'm going to do is move it down below the actual trigger, the dot, and I'm going to have to scale from the sides, which I don't like. And I need to turn off responsive resize. Sorry about that. So I want this to go from smaller, right about there, and 0 opacity underneath on the beginning state. So that's happening inside the component. Now I go back up to the component itself, and I'm going to add a new state, and it's just new state because we're going to use auto animate to make that happen. And let's just call this state pop-up. Right now in this state, if we go back into this and get the pin card selected, now we can bring up the opacity. We can bring this up here, and we're going to go ahead and scale it and then put it back where it goes, which is right there, and we are good. So if we go back to the component and check our states, we have our default and then we have our pop-up. We can kind of see how it's going to happen from here. Now we need to wire this. So I'm in the default state. In the default state, I need to select my component. The trigger is going to be the ellipse. So that is where I put my tap. It's going to be an auto animate, and we're going to animate it to the pop-up state of the component. We want to just ease in. 0.3 is fine. And now we go back to the component so we can get into the pop-up state. And let's say the move is they tap on the ellipse again, and that will auto animate them back to the default state of the component. And let's do ease out. All right, that is it. So let's get our component back in the default state. We can't check that yet because I'm out here in the pasteboard, and that's not how things work. So out here in the pasteboard somewhere, poke a mask right here, and turn on the visibility. So the reason that I have this here is just so that I have clean edges. So I'm about to turn this on. Let's collapse this and the big polka. I'm going to mask all of this just to clean up the edges. So mask with shape and boom. So everything is still there. I need to be in design mode while I'm doing this. Now what I'm going to do is bring this down, working on this artboard right here, and I'd like to have this pretty much centered. So let's go up a little. Now I'm going to activate this as a scroll group. So a horizontal and vertical scroll. Maybe I want to leave my persistent nav at the bottom. So I really just want the group up here. And that's it. We are ready. So let's take a look. So here's my map, my Polka map. I can scroll around, take a look. I go, oh, here's an interesting thing. I wonder, let's put it right in the center so we can see. I wonder what it's going to do. Boom. So obviously I would do that animation really fast, like 0.1, and maybe not have it go so far. Maybe have it start from right behind instead of below, and that would smooth that animation out. But that's the idea behind it, and that's a little about components and starting to think about nesting them and putting all these things together. All right, let's look at the other pre-wired state, which is a toggle, and we'll use this heart for that. I'm actually going to bring this heart by option dragging it to create a copy down here because this one isn't actually in a group, and I'm going to make sure it's not in a group. So this is going to be our toggle heart, and I can show you how to put a sound on this also. So very simply, you just want to decide let's say that when the heart is outlined, and definitely not 8, don't ever put a 8 border on something. Let's say the heart is this outline. All right, we make that a component, Command K. Our default state is open, not like. We're going to hit toggle state, and our toggle state is going to be light. And in the toggle state, we just want to add, very simply, a fill. And why can't I see that there? The fill, and that's it. So we have default, light, default. Maybe in the light state, the border is darker. I don't know. Sure. So very, very easily. Oh, yeah. And we don't have to wire it because that's one of the pre-made actions. So it just clicks back and forth between the states. However, if we go into prototype, and right now we're on the like state. So let's go back to the default state. And let's say that with this animating into the light state, we also want to add audio playback. So I just hit the little plus sign next to the action. There's also a speech playback that you can record speech or give it a text file and it will actually read it. And then we can choose a file. So we're going to add a new file. Somewhere in here I have, yep. Still, there are plenty of sound effects out there. Let's just do the digi-plink. I'm not 100% convinced you all are going to be able to hear this on the recording, but I will tell you if it worked or not. And it did. It just gave a little plink. So that's how easy it is to add signs, additional signals. In the UX world, we call those haptics, whether it's a vibrate, a deep press where you feel resistance, sound is a haptic. Some visual cues can be a haptic also. Okay, so that is the other pre-wired state in here. Let's look at animating the heart fill. And let's do this just for the ease of things. Let's go ahead and ungroup this component. So I just have toggle heart right here. And the other piece that I need is I'm going to utilize this guy. And I want to be in design phase. Really bad about that today. And I think I want to do that darker border move. So what I'm going to do is move this up to actually fill this. And we're going to start it right there. So let's get in here. All right, so I have my heart liquid, and I want to make sure this heart liquid is right underneath my toggle heart, which now is going to be fill up heart. Okay. What I need is a mask for this, and I want to use the fill up heart itself. So I have it selected in layers panel. I click Command D and then just change the name, fill up heart mask. Maybe just so I have an indicator, I want to fill it that blue so that I know that's my mask, not the fill up heart when I look over here in the layers panel. I'm going to select all 3 layers, right click, mask with shape. Now all I have is the outline that I'm going to start with for my component. So fill in heart, boom, and off to component land we go. So again, I can use the plus sign. My default state is exactly this. I want a new state because we're going to use auto animate. I'm going to call this filled. Right now we're in the filled state. So I'm over in the layers panel. I'm going to open up this component. I have fill in heart. I'm going to drill down into that. What I need to address is the heart liquid, and I just need it to come up as far as it can to make that look filled. And that's it. Back to the component. Take a quick look at my two states into prototype so I can wire this. I am wiring right off the top level component, so I just click the caret and that gives me my action. So on tap, I want to animate. My destination is going to be the filled state. I want to ease out. That actually works. Let's put this on 0.5 so it goes nice and slow. And then for the filled state, I want to make sure I can unlike and change my mind because options are good. So I want that filled, tap, auto animate back to the default state, and we'll make that happen a little quicker. So like we can pretend maybe nobody saw it if I did it really, really quick. All right, so let's take a look. Oh, I left that in the. All right, let's go back to stop default state before you hit play. And now when I hit play, and I can't zoom in, so, but you can see that slowly fills up or real quick runs away. All right, so that's, kind of the basics. Let's take a look at, and I should let this open. So I believe that one's not wired. This one is wired. Two things I want to look at. How to animate a hamburger to an X. And then this is a fab button, a fly out button. These are all over the newest Material 3 specs as context sensitive buttons. You also can think about doing some pretty tricky things with navs with these that work really smoothly. So I have a round button with a plus sign indicating more. I tap on it. The button changes color a little. It rotates so this becomes a close. The buttons fly out and I'm back to my plus sign. So let's look at those two things quickly here. Stop it. All right, so so I have hamburger, bottom, middle, top. They are just lines. And back to design phase. I'm going to make these a component. So command click, and this is going to be ham to X. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. What I want to do is take the middle one first, and I want this to scale down to just be a dot in the very center, pretty much without moving. It's going to be hidden by the other two, which I'm going to move with, so the animation looks correct, a rotation. And they need to rotate 45 degrees. They need to rotate from the center, though. So I think if you turn off responsive resize, they rotate from the center. This might not be perfect, but for the purposes of this demo, it will work. Now the other one I want to rotate the other direction, so that'll be a minus 45. And then I'm going to go ahead and line this up where it is. If you have the animation set fast enough, you aren't going to see it. So that, except I did that backwards. So this actually now, all the pieces are in there, just that I forgot to add the state before I moved everything. So this actually is going to be the XXX. And then for the default state, what I need to do is move everything back, right? So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to open the bottom. I'm going to change my rotation to 0. And then I'm going to move this down. I'm going to select the one that is the top, put the rotation back to 0. I'm going to move that back up so it's even. And then the one in the middle, I want the width to be, I think I remember that's supposed to be 20. And it's not letting me do that, of course. So I'm going to have to pull it out manually. So there we go. And now we're back to the hamburger. And that's default. And wow, that didn't work at all because the default was set. All right, so technically, so order of doing these things is really important. Number one, you have to have everything in there you need to work with. Number two, you have to have the layers stacked in order the way you want them. Number three, you can't change any names as you are working. So I'm in the default state. Let me do this one more time just so I can show you. And we take this one. This will probably work better since I had everything centered appropriately in there. Take this back to center. We're going to rotate this one 45 and put it center over this. We're going to rotate this one minus 45 and get it up center to the whole thing like the X, and that's how quick that was, right? So now let's check. There we go. There we go. Leave it on default state, prototype. Hit the caret so we can animate. We want to tap. We want to auto animate. We want to go to the X. And let's put this on 0.2 with ease in out. We'll do it. Now we have to wire the back, so it'll go back to a hamburger when we close the menu, which we're going to look at later. So yes, yes, we just have to set the destination, get back on the default. We can open up the preview, and boom, you can see that animates fairly nicely. There's a little flash I'm getting in there that I would spend a little time with, but I don't want to spend that time here. All right, so let's look at this fly out fab button, fly out button. This is fairly straightforward. So I do have these grouped, and the first thing I'm going to do is ungroup these so that we can see them. And I'm in design phase, sorry. So these three are groups. They're labeled plus image camera. Notice the plus out of this group is the one on top because before I make this a component, I'm going to set my default state and stack these up so that you can't see them behind each other. All right, I have all three stacked up. It looks correct for my starting point. I'm going to hit Command K to make it a component. This is going to be cam fab because technically that's camera stuff underneath there. Default state's going to be a new state so that we can use the auto animate feature. This is going to be open for my state. Now I can open this up. I want to have the image and camera. Now, when it comes to moving these, sure, I can drag holding shift, but I might also grab that plus button. So what I'm going to do instead is use the arrow keys to nudge, but what I'm going to do is hold shift so that my arrow keys go by 10. That allows me to have a lot of control. Now I know I have 15 pixels of space in between there. And now if I just get the camera layer, I can do the same thing. And I can hit that even spacing really quickly without having to go back, select everything, and go up and hit distribute. The other thing that I want to happen in this open state is I want that plus sign rotated, so it's my close, And we could also, if I get under here, um, take this fill down. Maybe I just do a little transparency for that to bring that down. And there we go. That's our open state. So back to my states, I can take a look. Looks good from here. We go into prototype, activate our wire. This is going to be a tab. Auto animate. We want it to go to the open state, ease in, ease out. Um, let's make this 0.3. And then for the open state, activate our wire, auto animate. It's going to go back to the default, ease in, ease out. I don't know why that didn't stay 0.3, same as the other one. All right, and then go back to the default state and let's take a look. Always test. And boom, that's pretty nice. Very straightforward. The effect, the payoff for doing that is pretty simple. So we aren't going, I'm not going to go over it. These are just the loader bar is just animating the mask and what it's showing. You actually build the whole bar behind it, which is what this is the setup for down here. And then with the search, you have a rectangle that's scaled down to be a circle, and you have a line that is this line, and the whole thing is masked and it's revealing this text. But really, this is the original holder for the magnifying glass, and the outer bar is the whole glass. So you can get really creative with this kind of stuff. And here's another example of play button to pause button as animation, just like we did the hamburger. All right. Boom, boom, done, done, and done. All right, let's take a look at using everything that we've kind of talked about and learned in here. Let's take a look at putting together a hamburger menu. So what I kind of have set up is I have the three dots, not the lines for the hamburger. And when you click on it, it expands to an X. This menu slides in and the screen blurs out. Where I have that set, I have all of my stuff down here waiting for me. All right. So I have a couple things on the, there we go. This is the correct board. So we have some stuff going on down at the bottom with the nav and the search and the clickable heart. We can slide this a little more out of the way, just to right there is about as far as I want to go, so you can see. This is my blur for the background. That plus sign's waiting to be a fab button down there. So the blur for the background is, if I turn this off, just a black rectangle. You can also see I've got a little bit of a highlight blur around my menu up here. But that background blur is just a rectangle that covers. You activate underneath the shadows in the effects, the background blur. You can dial that in however you like. Panel for my card. This is the over panel. In here, these would be links, so that's why they're groups, so that in the prototype phase, I can wire them out to something else. I have the outer circle because that's where I want my tab. And then the overflow is the three ellipses grouped so that I can animate them within the tab. All right, so that's everything I need. So I need everything from that overflow to the background blur. And that's everything. That's what I'm going to make my component with. So I make my component, and this is more menu, and default state is not this. So before I move on, I want to make sure I get the default state set correctly. Let's do the background blur the wrong way so that you can see the adjustment. You might be able to see it here. When I hit that edge right there, see how it highlights with that white? The way that I'm doing this here, let's just do it the right way since you can actually see it and I pointed it out. The thing to do is to actually work with scale. So I take this down to 1 pixel wide just off the edge and leave it there. And then when in the open state, I'm just going to pull it across, and that keeps that white highlight from showing up in your animation. It actually took me forever to track that down and figure out what was doing that. What is that piece? Okay, it did that to me earlier. There's something in here that I'm not sure. Not sure what it is, but we are not going to fight that. We're just going to ignore that for now and hope that it doesn't do anything. All right, the over panel. So if I put this just off the artboard right on the edge, it's going to come in really fast and it's or really slow. I like to go a little bit off so I get a little bit smoother animation. The outer we aren't going to touch, and the overflow is set the way that it's supposed to be. So here is our default state for this. Now we're going to add a state. It's going to be a new state. This is going to be open. Maybe it's more open. And now we get to arrange things. So I'm going to start from I like to start from the back and work up. So I'm going to grab my blur background. I'm going to pull that over. Then I'm going to grab my over panel, the whole panel, select, and I'm going to drag that in. I like it when they do the kind of from the corner. The outer circle is going to stay the way it is. The 3 dots are going to become, the 3 dots are going to become the X's. And easy for this, so I'm going to unlock my proportional. I'm going to give them a width of 20. That's going to need to be in the center, and we're going to give it rotation 45. And then I do the same for this one. So 20, and this one needs to be minus 45. So boom, it's in place. The one in the middle is hid behind there. So that works, and that's my open. And then I have groups in the over panel that I can put links on when I wire. So that's my state. I can take a look. Here's the open, whatever this thing is. We're just gonna push that out of the way. It's fine. That's just the component outline for the whole component. And here it is, open. So we can see that. So closed, open. All right, into prototype. So I'm going to open this up. Remember, I want to trigger this whole thing from this circle because it's a bigger hit area. So I'm going to pull out my wire. It's a tap. It's auto animate. I want to go to the more open state. I'm just going to put ease in, ease out, and 0.3 is what I'm going to leave on it. All right. Then I go back to the component. I go to the open state. And what I want is the outer, and I want to set that tab auto animate back to the default. Now, while I'm in here, command click, since these are groups, I can send these to, instead of auto animate, we can transition, and I can send it to any of the other boards that I want to. Probably not that one. Say we would go to that one, and maybe the next link down is going to go to that one, so that I have those there. I would also probably put previous links on these, but for our purposes here, this does setting up the menu. So we're here, our default, we're wired, open and closed. We should be good to test. So there's the board, there's our animate, our slide in, and there's transfer to another board. So look at that again. I'll hit the tap from down here so you can watch the X. That looks pretty good. I like that. And the slide in is nice. There's no white flash. So scaling from the side is definitely the move. And the link inside there for the nested link works. All right, and there you have it. That was everything I promised you. I hope you found that helpful. Enjoy your time playing in XD.